Recently, we were at the dinner table, and my older child, Pierce, was spinning a tale about vampires. The grown-ups were playing along, and the story became more elaborate. We argued that obviously our family would be excellent vampire fighters, given the fact that not one but two ministers are able to bless water balloons as needed. But what if the vampires surprised us? What if we didn't know their identity? Finally, our youngest, Connolly, burst out authoritatively. Everybody, we need to talk about unicorns. Sometimes when the news is very dark and the storyline is getting away from us, it's time to shift the narrative. Enter Hat Day. Our family celebrated the second annual Hat Day this past week. On Hat Day, we observe the following. Donuts are eaten. Someone must wear a tutu. We sing carols, which are primarily Christmas carols, with the words replaced with hat-themed lyrics, though any song can be changed to be about hats if you really try. We wear as much of the color teal as possible, and of course, hats. At this point, you may be having some serious questions about the competence of your search committee. But don't worry, I am not some kind of crackpot. Of course Hat Day includes decorating. That was just so obvious that I didn't mention it. You see, the house has already been decorated on Hat Day's Eve with both every hat we own and artwork we make together on Hat Day's Eve. On Hat Day's Eve, we also eat pizza and wear mismatched socks. The main event on Hat Day, after laser tag, is an epic dance contest with multiple prize categories, including Best Twirls, Best Robot, Best Slow Motion Dance, and Most Energetic. Prizes range from choosing next year's Hat Day movie to a makeshift trophy chalice containing a disco ball with a hat on it, depending on the category. The year Hat Day was established, our beloved family dog, Moose, had suddenly succumbed to cancer a month earlier. When the time came, our wonderful vet came, and out in our backyard, we put Moose to sleep where he could watch squirrels and have one last cheeseburger. A week or so later, our family went through its third bout of COVID. Our youngest child brought it home from preschool each time. We sent her to school with a good mask, and our family never went anywhere but work and school, but the same couldn't be said of her classmates, and she had to take the mask off to eat. So as we all learned, you just can't control some things in life. My dad died of metastatic cancer that had spread to his brain when I was 27. Before his illness, he wore this hat all the time. I've kept it ever since his death. It made people laugh, and he liked to make people laugh. It had a seat at my wedding, my ordination, and my sister's high school graduation. My sister is 11 years younger than I am. When she was about 2, she found a salad bowl in the cupboard one day and started wearing it on her head. She became attached to the bowl the same way some kids get attached to a stuffed animal or a blankie. So to my parents' credit, they just rolled with it, and the pictures from that era are pretty amazing. After a few months, they did get her to agree to wear an actual hat instead of the bowl, at least in public. Eventually, she moved on to more stylish hats, like this one, which she often wore in high school. After a while, she abandoned it as hopelessly embarrassing and out of fashion. So, of course, when I found it in a box in the basement years later, I took it. I show up wearing it periodically when I visit her, just to remind her that her sister loves her and will never miss an opportunity to roast her. I like to think it's what my dad would have done. My dad was diagnosed with cancer the day after I submitted my application to Union Theological Seminary, where I ultimately went for my seminary education. I deferred my admission and went home to be with my family for the last 8 months of my dad's life. I always think that timing is pretty incredible. If the diagnosis had come even a day earlier, I might not have sent that application at all. And if I had started my ministry journey before Dad got sick, I think my ministry would have lacked depth. I was one of those who needed just a little bit of a shove from life to force me to look beyond the obvious. Be nice to each other. Work for justice. Of course, yes, but what else? How do we face death? How do we make meaning? I started meditating and found a lot of comfort in Buddhist teachings when my dad was sick. I needed a way to come to terms with suffering, and Buddhism helped me in a way that my previous standalone Unitarian Universalism didn't. By the time I started seminary, I wasn't just a Unitarian Universalist, I was also a Buddhist. And as an aside, my Buddhist lineage is the Kagyu, or black hat lineage. I don't know if you've noticed, but other religious traditions are really into hats. We UUs need to do some self-reflection on how we could do more here. I ordered this hat specifically for this year's Hat Day. It's teal with a chicken. Seemed just right. So now that I've worked as a hospice chaplain for 7 years, I know that my experience losing my dad was very similar to others. For many of us, one of the hardest things about losing someone we love to a prolonged illness is the dread. The anticipation of the loss draws us away from what we can appreciate here and now. And big loss can also seep into the rest of life. We can start to dread other losses too. That dread, if we're not careful, can begin to permeate our whole perspective. Instead of looking for a way to hold the reality of loss in balance with joy, we sink into our loss until everything is mired in heaviness and despair. Or, at the other extreme, we hide from loss and we live our lives in avoidance of reality, pretending everything will last forever and wasting our time chasing things that ultimately give us no lasting happiness. One of the Buddha's first teachings was that everything is impermanent. We may think of our lives, or at least human history, as this epic saga. But in reality, as geologists like Paul Heller remind us, if we think of the Earth's history represented by a 24-hour clock, our entire geologic era started in the final minute of the day. We haven't been here long. And each of us, and in fact every human institution, everything you love, everything you worry about, it's just here for a moment. Democracy, authoritarianism, every species that currently inhabits the earth, including our own, someday, everything about all of us will be forgotten. So, everybody, we need to talk about unicorns. The answer to a world that, by virtue of its ability to change and create new possibilities and new experiences and hope, also includes the reality of loss. It's not denial, and it's also not nihilism. Yeah, we're all going to die. That's why everyone is really precious. Having to die also happens to be the only way we get to be alive. Our family's answer to this is Hat Day, joy and celebration of our relationships with the people we love most, building meaning and tradition together. And right in the middle of my husband's interpretation of how exactly an ostrich would dance to Shania Twain, and my sister sending me pictures of herself in her new kitchen wearing a teal salad bowl on her head. My dad's hat always has a place of honor right next to Moose's old collar. A minister wears many hats, but this is what I'm really here for. We are walking this path of being human together. And it's a beautiful, ugly, joyful, hard, amazing path. We need people to walk with us and remind us not to waste our time. I love Unitarian Universalism because it's full of people who have rejected many of the parts of religion that cause so much trouble. You're compassionate, intellectual, questioners of authority. We just have to be sure we didn't create our own set of problems by throwing out the baby with the bathwater when it comes to religion. We build community, but we aren't a social club. We're here to find meaning together. As a chaplain, I've seen too many people get to the end of life without knowing what gives them meaning. They just never really thought about it. And it doesn't much matter whether they're religious or not. You can go to church for the coffee and skip the meaning, but I don't recommend it. It can seem like Unitarian Universalism doesn't ask anything much of you. Be nice to each other. Work for justice. How hard could it be? Well, as it turns out, very. But our non-dogmatic faith also asks more of us than most, not less. We are called to a free and responsible search for meaning. What is your purpose? What will your life mean? How do you live with loss? Rejecting the trappings of religious dogma isn't the end of a search for meaning. It's the very beginning. I'm so glad to be here searching with you. As your minister, I'm here to help you build this community we can call home, a safe place to hang our hats while we support each other in lifelong growth toward finding meaning and living with love. I look forward to growing, taking care of each other, working for a better world, and wearing lots of silly hats with you. Amen.